The Lady's Maid by Katherine Mansfield. 11 o'clock. A knock at the door. I hope I haven't disturbed you, madame. You weren't asleep, were you? But I'm just giving my lady her tea, and there was such a nice cup over. I thought perhaps. Not at all, madam. I always make a cup of tea last thing. She drinks it in bed after her prayers to warm her up. I put the kettle on when she kneels down, and I say to it, "Now you needn't be in too much of a hurry to say your prayers, but it's always boiling before my lady is half through. You see, madam, we know such a lot of people, and they've all got to be prayed for, every one. My lady keeps a list of the names in a little red book. Oh dear, whenever someone new has been to see us, and my lady says afterwards, 'Ellen, give me my little red book.' I feel quite wild, I do. There's another, I think, keeping her out of her bed in all weathers, and she won't have a cushion. You know, madam, she kneels on the hard carpet. It fidgets me something dreadful to see her, knowing her as I do. I've tried to cheat her. I've spread out the elder down, but the first time I did it, oh, she gave me such a look. Holy it was, madame. Did our Lord have any elder down, Ellen? She said. But I was younger at the time. I felt inclined to say, no, but our Lord wasn't your age. No, he didn't know what it was to have your lumbago. Wicked, wasn't it? But she's too good, you know, madam. When I tucked her up just now and saw her lying back, her hands outside, and her head on the pillow so pretty, I couldn't help thinking, now you look just like your dear mother when I laid her out. Yes, madam, it was all left to me. Oh, she did look sweet. I did her hair soft like, round her forehead, all in dainty curls, and just to one side of her neck I put a bunch of most beautiful purple pansies. Those pansies made a picture of her, madam. I shall never forget them. I thought to-night, when I looked at my lady, now, if only the pansies were there, no one could tell the difference. Only the last year, madam, only after she'd got a little, well, feeble, as you might say. Of course, she was never dangerous. She was the sweetest old lady. But how it took her was, she thought she'd lost something. She couldn't keep still. She couldn't settle. All day long she'd be up and down, up and down. You'd meet her everywhere, on the stairs, in the porch, making for the kitchen, and she'd look up at you, and she'd say, just like a child, "I've lost it, I've lost it. Come along." I'd say, "Come along, and I'll lay out your patience for you." But she'd catch me by the hand. I was a favorite of hers, and whisper, "Find it for me, Ellen. Find it for me." Sad, wasn't it? No, she never recovered, madam. She had a stroke at the end. Last words she ever said was very slow. Look in. The look in. And then she was gone. No, madam, I can't say I noticed. Perhaps some girls. But you see, it's like this. I've got nobody but my lady. My mother died of consumption when I was 4, and I lived with my grandfather, who kept a hairdresser's shop. I used to spend all my time in the shop under a table dressing my doll's hair, copying the assistants, I suppose. They were ever so kind to me. used to make me little wigs, all colors, the latest fashions and all, and there I'd sit all day, quiet as quiet. The customers never knew. Only now and again I'd take my peep from under the tablecloth. But one day I managed to get a pair of scissors, and, would you believe it, madam, I cut off all my hair, snipped it off all in bits, like the little monkey I was. Grandfather was furious. He caught hold of the tongs. I shall never forget it. Grabbed me by the hand and shut my fingers in them. That'll teach you, he said. It was a fearful burn, and I've got the mark of it today. Well, you see, madam, he'd taken such pride in my hair. He used to sit me up on the counter before the customers came and do it something beautiful, big, soft curls and waved over the top. I remember the assistant standing round, and me ever so solemn with the penny grandfather gave me to hold while it was being done. But he always took the penny back afterwards. Poor grandfather, wild he was at the fright I'd made of myself, but he frightened me that time. Do you know what I did, madam? I ran away. Yes, I did. Round the corners, in and out. I don't know how far I didn't run. Oh dear, I must have looked a sight, with my hand rolled up in my penny and my hair sticking out. People must have laughed when they saw me. No, madam, grandfather never got over it. He couldn't bear the sight of me after. Couldn't eat his dinner, even if I was there. So my aunt took me. She was a cripple, and upholsteress tiny. She had to stand on the sofas when she wanted to cut out the backs, and it was helping her I met my lady. Not very, madam. Not so very, madam. I was 13, turned, and I don't remember ever feeling, well, a child, as you might say. You see, there was my uniform, and one thing and another. My lady put me into collars and cuffs. From the first. Oh yes, once I did. That was funny. It was like this. My lady had her two little nieces staying with her. We were at Sheldon at the time, and there was a fair on the common. Now, Ellen, she said, I want you to take the two young ladies for a ride on the donkeys. Off we went. Solemn little loves they were. Each had a hand, but when we came to the donkeys, they were a little too shy to go on, so we stood and watched instead. Beautiful those donkeys were. They were the first I'd seen out of the cart, for pleasure, as you might say. They were a lovely silver gray, with little red saddles and blue bridles and bells jingling on their ears, and quite big girls, older than me, even, were riding them, ever so gay. Not at all common, I don't mean, madam, just enjoying themselves, and I don't know what it was, but the way the little feet went, and the eyes so gentle, and the soft ears, made me want to go on a donkey more than anything in the world. Of course I couldn't. I had my young ladies, and what would I have looked like perched up there in my uniform? But all the rest of the day it was donkeys on the brain with me. I felt I should have burst if I didn't tell someone. And who was there to tell? But when I went to bed, I was sleeping in Mrs. James' bedroom. Our cook was there at the time, as soon as the lights was out. There they were, my donkeys, jingling along, with their neat little feet and sad eyes. Well, madam, would you believe it? I waited for a long time and pretended to be asleep, and then suddenly I sat up and called out as loud as I could, I do want to go on a donkey. I do want a donkey ride, you see. I had to say it, and I thought they wouldn't laugh at me if they knew I was only dreaming. Artful, wasn't it? Just what a silly child would think. No, madam, never now, of course. I did think of it at one time, but it wasn't to be. He had a little flower shop just down the road, across from where we was living. Funny, wasn't it? And me such a one for flowers. We were having a lot of company at the time, and I was in and out of the shop more often than not. As the saying is, and Harry and I, his name was Harry, go to quarreling about how things ought to be arranged, and that began it. Flowers. You wouldn't believe it, madam, the flowers he used to bring me. He'd stop at nothing. It was lilies of the valley, more than once, and I'm not exaggerating. Well, of course we were going to be married, and live over the shop. And it was all going to be just so. And I was to have the window to arrange. Oh, how I've done that window of a Saturday. Not really, of course, madam, just dreaming, as you might say. I've done it for Christmas, motto in holly and all, and I've had my Easter lilies with a gorgeous star, all daffodils in the middle. I've hung, well, that's enough of that. The day came, he was to call for me, to choose the furniture. Shall I ever forget it? It was a Tuesday. My lady wasn't quite herself that afternoon. Not that she'd say anything, of course. She never does, or will. But I knew by the way that she kept wrapping herself up and asking me if it was cold, and her little nose looked pinched. I didn't like leaving her. I knew I'd be worrying all the time. At last I asked her if she'd rather I put it off. Oh no, Ellen, she said. You mustn't mind about me. You mustn't disappoint your young man. And so cheerful, you know, madam, never thinking about herself. It made me worse than ever. I began to wonder. Then she dropped her handkerchief and began to stoop down to pick it up herself. A thing she never did. Whatever are you doing? I cried, running to stop her. Well, she said, smiling, you know, madam, I shall have to begin to practice. Oh, it was all I could do not to burst out crying. I went over to the dressing table and made believe to rub up the silver, and I couldn't keep myself in, and I asked her if she'd rather I didn't get married. No, Ellen, she said. That was her voice, madam. Like I'm giving you. No, Ellen, not for the wide world. But while she said it, madam, I was looking in her glass, of course. She didn't know I couldn't see her. She put her little hand on her heart, just like her dear mother used to, and lifted her eyes. Oh, madam. When Harry came, I had his letters all ready, and the ring and a ducky little brooch he'd given me. A silver bird it was, with a chain in its beak, and on the end of the chain a heart with a dagger. Quite the thing. I opened the door to him. I never gave him time for a word. There you are, I said. Take them all back, I said. It's all over. I'm not going to marry you, I said. I can't leave my lady. White. He turned as white as a woman. I had to slam the door, and there I stood, all of a tremble, till I knew he had gone. When I opened the door, believe me or not, madam, that man was gone. I ran out into the road, just as I was, in my apron in my house shoes, and there I stayed in the middle of the road, staring. People must have laughed if they saw me. Goodness gracious, what's that? It's the clock striking, and here I've been keeping you awake. Oh, madam, you ought to have stopped me. Can I tuck in your feet? I always tuck in my lady's feet every night, just the same. And she says, Good night, Ellen. Sleep sound and wake early. I don't know what I should do if she didn't say that. Now, oh dear, I sometimes think, whatever should I do if anything were to? But there, thinking's no good to anyone, is it, madam? Thinking won't help. Not that I do it often, and if I ever do, I pull myself up sharp. Now then, Ellen, as it again. You silly girl. If you can't find anything better to do, then start thinking. And that's the end of The Lady's Maid by Katherine Mansfield. I find that when I read slower, I don't miss as many words when I read slower. When I read faster, I miss words and I'm not able to read the whole sentence. So when I read super slow, I'm actually able to not understand it, but I'm actually able to say the words accurately and clearly, or not clearly, but at least accurately. What was I gonna say? I still don't remember like what was in the last paragraph when I read it, so it's like my memory is so bad that I understand the sentence that I'm reading, but I'm not understanding the sentences before that. So like I understand what each sentence is saying, but like I forget what the previous sentences said because my memory is so bad. So that's an issue with reading these short stories. Is like I couldn't give you a summary of what that story was about. I could go back and read it again, and maybe I could take off parts of it and say, "Oh, this is about this, this, and this." If I read it a second time, maybe I could give you an accurate analysis if I read it a second or third time. It is sad. I can't read a story one time and tell you what the story's about. It is sad that I'd have to almost read it 3 times to tell you what even happened in that story. I know there's a donkey. I know there's like a marriage proposal or something, and that's all I remember. Like a donkey and a marriage proposal, and talking about like feet or something. Like the guy's like watching her feet. I don't remember anything else. And that's why I'm trying to read. That's why I'm trying to read this just to improve my memory skills. Though my primary goal is to say each word accurately. If I can say each word accurately, then that's a mission accomplished for me. I don't want to read a sentence and miss a word, because if I miss a word when I read a sentence, then I'm never gonna understand what I'm reading if I miss words in the sentence. So I'm trying to read the sentence and say every word in the sentence. That's goal number 1, is to say every word accurately in the sentence. Goal number 2 is to understand what the sentence means. Goal number 3 is to understand the previous sentences and have the memory to be able to say, I'm able to have a thorough knowledge of what I just read. And that is a goal to in the reading process, to get better at reading, to better understand what I'm saying and what I'm reading, and what is this about. Like to be able to do it. I can't do an analysis of the story until I can give you a summary of the story, and I can't give you a summary of the story until I actually understand what I'm reading at the time I'm reading it. Okay. So that's a work in progress. That's going to take. Maybe I'll try to start reading read a story every day, because if I read a story every day, then I'll get better at reading. Whereas if I read it every 3 weeks, then I'm not going to improve at the same speed as if I read it every day. So maybe I'll start reading a story every day, and maybe that would fix the problem. Maybe that would make me a better reader. Because, I want to go viral on this channel and try to, be the next LeVar Burton or whatever, the next William Shatner, the next trendsetter. So I have to get better at reading if I want to do this. It's pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult to read. I'm really bad at reading. I've always been bad at reading. And I've always hated reading, to be honest. But I think people can pick up a love for something they never had before if they do it enough. Anytime you do something enough, you could eventually like it. You could eventually love it. Because the difficult things in life is when you don't know what you're doing. So let me know in the comments below, what did you think of The Lady's Maid by Katherine Mansfield? Was that what it's called? The Lady's Maid? Yeah, The Lady's Maid by Katherine Mansfield. I'm almost running out of stories from Katherine Mansfield. I'm almost running out of, I think I have 8 more stories to read from Katherine Mansfield, and then I have to go to a different author. I think I forgot the name of the lady I'm going to do next. The person I'm going to start reading next after I finish the Katherine Mansfield one is actually a best friend of Katherine Mansfield who lived in the 1920s. I think her name is Virginia Woolf. I'm going to start reading Virginia Woolf when I finish reading Katherine Mansfield. But there's only so many public domain Virginia Woolf stories. I'll read all the public domain Virginia Woolf stories I can find. And then, after I finish all those I can find, I'm going to do public domain. I actually found another book of a public domain. I found this. You go to Project Gutenberg, and Project Gutenberg has a lot of what do you call it? Project Gutenberg has public domain books to read, and I found a book, 1922, of British short stories. So I'm reading short stories because I can't read long stories on here because my attention span isn't good enough to read a long story. But I found a 1922 book of British short stories, and I read British authors because I feel like British authors can write better. Like, I was able to read J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter when I was a kid, whereas I can't read other authors because I think American authors don't write as well as British authors. It's just my opinion. It's the same way I don't think a lot of American musicians are as good as British musicians. But specifically in authors, I think that a lot of I enjoy personally reading British authors more than I enjoy reading American authors. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'll switch to American authors once I get better at reading. Once I get better at reading, then maybe I'll read more American authors. But it's funny. There's this one American author that I get a lot of views from. There's actually a lot of people wanted me to. It's actually one of my most viewed videos on here. Is this one American author? She's an African American woman, and I was pretty good at reading it because she actually lives in the area that I live in right now, in the American South. So actually, I can actually read her accent really well because I know how to do that accent, the American South accent. But it's just, I don't really understand. It's kind of like a lot. It's kind of like I don't know. I don't really like her writing as much as a lot of these British authors. So like, I don't know. I don't know if I can keep reading that one, but I know it was very popular when I read it. I got a lot of views, so maybe I should focus more on it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll go to that eventually. Let me know in the comments below. What did you think of the story? I thought it was a great story. Please subscribe to this channel to be part of the community. And please like this channel. Please like this video. It really helps the channel out a lot. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.